The Act and the rules were amended a number of times, and these amendments, the amendments that we really need to focus on, are amendments that came about after India became a member of the World Trade Organization (WTO). So, when we became a member of the WTO has an agreement on intellectual property rights called the TRIPS Agreement, which stands for Trade Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights. The TRIPS Agreement brought about certain changes in the intellectual property regime of its member nations. All member countries of the WTO were required to have certain common minimum standards on intellectual property rights. With regard to patents, it meant, among other things, that all countries will grant a universal patent term of 20 years. Earlier, different countries had different grant times. Now, after the coming into force of the TRIPS agreement under the WTO, all countries who are members to the WTO grant a patent for 20 years. So, the term of the patent is now universal in that sense. So, India had to carry out various amendments. So, the Patent Act was amended in 1999 to bring about certain provisions. Then again there was an amendment in 2002, and the last amendment came in 2005. So, with the 2005 amendment, the Indian law was in complete compliance with the obligations under the TRIPS. Now, why did we do it in 3 sets of amendments? Little bit of history will tell us that India had actually taken the benefit of a transition period, which allowed some developing countries to bring their laws in compliance over a 10-year period. So, the TRIPS agreement under the WTO allowed developing countries to bring in the compliance in a phased manner. So, we took advantage of that provision, which gave us a 10-year lead time to bring the amendments in place, and that explains why we had this phased amendment. Around the same time, the rules were also amended. The patent rules were amended in 2003, and they were again amended in 2005. Now, the 2003 was a overhaul of the earlier rules. The earlier rules were the patent rules 1972, and this was completely overhauled, and in 2005 there were some amendments to it. Importantly, after 2005 there has been a series of amendments. We had an amendment of the rules in 2006, we had an amendment in 2013, and again in 2014 and in 2016. Now, if you look at an updated version of the rules, you will find these amendments mentioned in various footnotes. So, when you see an updated copy of the rules, you will be able to see which amendment came at what time. So, what were the amendments brought by the 2014? The footnote will tell you the detail. Now, what does this tell us? Why is it that before 2005 the Patents Act had to be amended 3 times, and whereas the patent rules were amended only twice, but after 2005 we have had 4 further amendments of the rules and not of the Act. Now, this tells us the structure in which the patent laws are designed and enforced. The acts are passed by the Parliament. So, they are central legislations passed by the Union government, whereas the rules are rules made by the central government. They are not like the Act, they are not prepared in the form of a bill and placed in the Houses of Parliament for approval, and then it does not require a presidential assent, whereas rules can be made without going through this process, and it can be created by the central government internally. It is something, it is a process that is internally driven. Because Act requires the Parliament to pass it, the acts are written in a very broad language. Wherever you need to have some details, they would leave the rules to prescribe the details. So, the Act can be understood as something which gives the broad rules, whereas the rules are descriptive of the details that were not described in the act. So, we understand the rules as giving the details of the things that were not mentioned in the act.